I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
What was your reaction to the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, starting with Force Awakens?
They weren't really my Star Wars. I guess I'm one of those people, you know, like when you're a kid, you kind of get stuck in what you remember from being a kid, which is part of the reason a lot of us hate reboots or sequels made way after the fact. I guess because you look through things with rose-tinted glasses, so to speak. And to me, they weren't on the par with what my Star Wars was. And I know modern stuff has happened since then, and there's not, all the miniatures and all the stuff like there used to be practical effects, but it just seems like they were just cashing in on a franchise to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And they figured, hey, we have built-in Star Wars fans, people like us that grew up with the original movies. And I'm not old enough, unfortunately, to have seen them in the theaters, but I grew up with them from the time I can remember, on VHS or whatever, or on TV, and they'd play movies on TV. And then they thought, well, then there's also people like, oh, Star Wars is cool. New people, that don't know any better. I hate to say don't know any better, because, if you like something, you like something. And I'm one of those people. I like a lot of crap that people think is garbage. Because at the end of the day, I'm like, well, if I feel like it was worth watching and entertaining to me, then it was worth watching. And that's the only reason I watch movies or TV shows is I want to be entertained. And, there's lots of stuff that people don't like or are critical of. But and I'm not saying the movies didn't entertain me. To me, they just got sloppy and were like forcing this stuff to make money. It was a cash grab, which, I know everything's a business. And obviously the movie industry is a huge billion dollar business, but it was like a cash grab to me.
What did Star Wars mean to you growing up? Was this one of your favorite franchises or something you loved in passing?
Yeah, I'm not going to say I'm, like a super fan or anything. And when people talk about canon and all that stuff, I've never been that deep into Star Wars to like be able to dissect every little thing like, a lot of our members of our community can. But I just remember growing up thinking, it's space, there's fights, it's awesome. The effects at that time were like mind blowing to me anyway, as a kid, and I was like, man, this is like the greatest thing ever. Because as a kid, you think, oh, by the time I'm an adult, this is what the world's going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be flying around on X-Wings and having lightsaber battles and having blasters and all that, Every generation's went through that. Even like in the 50s, they're like, oh, by the year 1980, we're going to have flying cars. And, it's like every generation from as far back as I can remember anyway, every generation has had that futuristic, cool space thing.
Mm.
Oh, by the time you're grown up, Steven, man, we're going to have flying cars. You can live on Mars if you want to.
Yep.
And it was the same for, 70s, 80s kids with Star Wars. It didn't seem like it was that far away.
Yeah.
And it also, and it's basically a space Western. It had the classic story line of, good, the bad, save, the lady in distress. It was just like this complete package.
Yeah.
That as a kid, it was like, man, this is like the greatest thing ever. And, it was one of those things that was just in the rotation of, what am I going to watch? What's going on? Oh, I'll pop Star Wars. I'll pop a Star Wars movie in.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you'd seen it over and over and over again, it was still entertaining. And even though you already knew it was going to happen, it kept you glued to the screen, even though you had seen it 20 times, you know. And that's like the first memory in my childhood of great cinema that just draws you in. Of course, as we get older, our palates change, and you know, you look back now and you're like, well, I mean, that's not necessarily the most high class cinema ever. But even today, if I put on one of the original movies, I sit here riveted, like, oh man, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
Even though now we've all seen them hundreds of times, you know,
right.
and you know it's going to happen. But to me, that's the thing about the movies is, you know it's going to happen. You grew up with it as a kid. You've seen it hundreds of times. But right now, if you said, hey, let's put on Return of the Jedi, I'd be like, fuck yeah, bro. Let's put on Return of the Jedi. Let's pop some popcorn, and I'm going to sit there on the edge of the couch, and I'm going to eat that shit up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I had never seen it before.
Right. Dig it.
It's endearing. I guess it's endearing to me. I mean, yeah, it's childhood, but it's also, even today, I think the movies hold up. Even though now they have all those CGI, you know, movies now, a lot of movies now are like 99% CGI, which is a whole other thing to talk about. But to me, they still hold up today. I mean, the way they were produced, the effects. I mean, yeah, nowadays you're like, oh, that's a little bit corny. That, you know, oh, you can tell that's a model, but it still holds up to me.
Yeah.
And I love a lot of the older movies like that, like the 80s movies. To me, some of the best movies were made in the 80s. I actually made my way to the Fandom Menace in an somewhat odd route, I guess. It started on a creepy paranormal channel, creepy little book that I found because I'm into stuff like that too, like, you know, paranormal, creepy stuff, ghosts, cryptids.
Yeah, Pete's
and I
great.
somehow found Pete's channel, and I originally started. You know, he did his weekly live stream. You know, he would do his short videos and his weekly live stream. I think it was on Saturday nights.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, you know, he went to High Strangeness, which was 7 days a week most of the time. And I started out there as a chat rat. I was a chat rat at Pete's. And actually, when I started, I was under my actual name. That's why I say before HanStar was born. And once I got way more into it, that's where I met Mox Rocks. That's where I met JJ, SithLord 3827 was at Pete's. Mox was his mod. JJ was a chat rat like me. And after doing it for a while, and I became friends with him and Mox, and we got to talking more. Mox is actually who convinced me to even have a Twitter, because he's like, oh, you know, then we can talk to each other, you know, because at that time we didn't have each other's phone numbers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, but we can DM each other on Twitter, you know, and we would DM back and forth while we're also talking in the chat and stuff like that. And then it got to a point where I was like, maybe I shouldn't use my real name.
Right.
So that's when HanStar was born, was my online YouTube persona. And at this point, I never even had any thoughts of like having a channel. I was just like, oh, well, I'll use this name to represent me online, so I'm not just like using my actual name. How I kind of ended up going over to the Fandom Menace side was there for a while. Sometimes he would have Mary Mayhem on as a guest on his panel, and he did a show, and he's like, oh yeah, and you know, tomorrow night or whatever, Mary's doing karaoke. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool, you know. And I kind of looked at her channel, and I went to karaoke,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, in the chat, watched it. You know, JJ was over there, Mox was over there, my buddies that I'd already made, you know, a creepy little book. And that's also where I was exposed to, you know, like Jesse at the Crow's Nest, Mecca Random, some other, you know, Fed, Fedorable the Horrible, you know, the cast of characters that went in and out of Pete's shows, where I was exposed to all those people, and DJD. And so I went and watched karaoke, and I was like, man, this is pretty cool, you know. This is totally different than anything I'd ever seen. So I started frequenting her channel and her streams is, I guess, kind of how you could say I moved over to the Fandom Menace side, and then she got more popular, and she needed a full-time mod because this was around the time she started to get monetized, and as your channel gets bigger and you get monetized, more asshats show up, and if you're trying to juggle all this stuff, you can't take the time to moderate your own stream. She wanted Mox to, and Mox, Mox, he was moderating. He was kind of like Tommy is now. He was moderating for like 85 different channels, it seemed like. And Mox was like, I can't do it. There has to be a limit. And she's like, well, and by this time, he and I had been friends for quite a while. We would talk like this personally outside of chats and on, in streams. So he and JJ and I had developed a good friendship. So he trusted me and knew I was a good dude. So when she was looking for somebody, he suggested me. I had never been a moderator on anything. And basically just needing somebody. And she had seen me around in her chats and stuff. So it's not like she didn't know who I was, period. But I was like, okay, yeah, I'll moderate for Mary. And Mox kind of give me we called it the Mox School of Moderation, which is the style that I ran off of, and that JJ, when he became a moderator for a lot of people, that SithLord 3827 ran off of, was what we called the Mox method. And I started modding for Mary, and then from there, friendship grew with her to where I was more involved in what she was doing on her channel. Personally, like this, we got into a friendship, and I just got sucked in to the whole community, I guess, so to speak. Not in a bad way, but that was like how my foot ended up in the door. And once I was there, I was like, this is fucking spectacular. All these people supporting each other. And, and not taking away from what you calling it the Fandom Menace, but it's so much more than that. And I know you know that. It's so much more than that. To me, I mean, yeah, we're still called the Fandom Menace. But to me, it's like so much more than that now. It started as a movement against the new Star Wars movies, but has taken on like a whole other life of its own. To me, it's like a safe haven, for lack of a better way to say it. It's a safe haven for geeks and weirdos and people like us that love all these different franchises, to support each other, and just put out, whether you're just a chat rat, whether you put out videos, whether you do live streams, everybody's just there for each other. And to me, that's what's so great about this community is just, I mean, every community has its tiffs here and there, but compared to other communities I've seen, that there's not the shit show in the Fandom Menace like there is on that side, on that community.
Yeah.
There's so much animosity and infighting, whereas here, it's like whether you're a monetized channel with 30,000 subscribers, or you're like me with under 1,000 subscribers, we're all on a level playing field, and we all treat each other the same. That's why I like the saying you hear a lot in this community: we all rise together. Whether you just a chat rat, whether you have a channel with 100 subs, whether you're monetized and have 50,000 subs, we still prop each other up. Is what I love so much about this community, and why I continue to be involved in the community. It's like a little oasis to me anyway, on YouTube, on the internet, with like-minded people. And it's went from Star Wars to basically any kind of franchise like that, like you talk about Orville, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Firefly, to name the ones I can think of off the top of my head. It's now melted into like this melting pot of all these communities. And I'm not a super huge Star Trek fan, but if you are, we still hang out. If you want to talk about Star Trek, we'll talk about Star Trek or whatever. but it's just like this huge melting pot, and people intermingle on each other's channels, support each other.
Love it. That's how I feel. I love this community, man. That's why I keep coming back. That's why I support it the way I do, or I try to when I'm not going temporarily insane, as Waltons tend to do.
I'll use a saying that we use. Well, we're all a little fucked up in our own way. Some of us just hide it better than others because normal sane people wouldn't work this job this long.
Gotcha.
And I kind of think the Fandom Menace is like that. We all know going into it. We're all a little fucked up in our own way. Some of us a little bit more eccentric than others. Some of us hide it better than others. But that's part of the fun and the joy of the community to me is, it's like the island of misfit toys. Everybody's welcome. Come on, everybody.
Yeah.
Dig it. Welcome, Steven. Yeah, you're fucked up too. So am I. Let's hang out. Let's hang out.
One of the I'm glad that you hit on Mary. One of the things I want to hit on in the Fandom Menace is the KOTOR chat, which was a chat that I made friends with her. She brought me into theirs. I met a lot of people through there. A lot of friendship shows and connections were made in that chat. Can you say anything, or would you like to say anything about Mary's involvement with bringing community together? Okay.
But, as far as Mary bringing people together, most everybody, I won't say most everybody because there's like two parts of that. A lot of the people I know and interact with in the community now are because I met and started a friendship with Mary. That's where I really got to meet more of the Fandom Menace people. Like I said, started as her moderator, became her friend. She let me on karaoke sometimes. But, I met just so many great people behind the scenes of her doing her streams and stuff like that just kind of pulled me deeper and deeper into the community. And she does. She's kind of like a mama bear that all of a sudden somebody randomly shows up and it's like she gives them a big old bear hug and she's like, hey, do you want to be on Wednesday Night Mayhem? It's about such and such. And all of a sudden somebody you've never heard of that, you may have heard of them a little bit. Oh, there's the HanStar guy in the community. What's going on with him? And Mary puts them on a stream. I've seen her do that over and over again. And then they go on to become these great members of the community. Not saying they wouldn't be if it wasn't for her, but it's like she has a bigger platform than a lot of us. So it's almost like she puts her Mary Mayhem stamp on them like, hey, that's a cool person. They got good stuff to say. You need to listen to what they have to say. And then they go on and branch out. And it's like a snowball rolling downhill that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. And
more people keep, Mary brings somebody in, like she'll bring you in. Oh, well, then you bring me in. And then, I bring, it's like this growing and growing living thing.
Is there anyone else in the community that you would say help to pull people together or make it feel more like a group, a community?
My main person would be SithLord 3827. A lot of the people, like I said, I met a ton of people through Mary. Then, I met Chris Knight through karaoke, and now, he and I are good friends. I forget, honestly, where along the line I met you. Not
through Mary, probably.
To be an asshole, probably, yeah. But, you get old and years go by and, it's like, oh, I've always known you.
Right.
And you kind of lose the origin story, so to speak. Like I said, the only reason I remember meeting Chris is because it was specifically through karaoke when she started letting me be on karaoke. And I specifically remember JJ because he basically was with me from my start, even being on YouTube at all.
What made me feel part of everything, honestly, like as far as like being starstruck and then building a friendship was Tom, Rob and Mecca. Like those guys would have me on their Mead streams, and it made me feel like $1 million. Like I'm worthy enough to be up here with them. And then we develop that friendship, and like you said, people become real.
And I will say this: I love all three of them. Unfortunately, I never had or have had a lot of interaction with Mecca. I've had some, but not to the degree I have had, especially with Tom. I've also had quite a bit of interaction with Rob, again through Marioki, and Tom through
Yeah.
Marioki too. That's where I really originally met them. And Tom, talking about being starstruck, he's the most down to earth person
Yes.
to be on a huge, huge channel. He's like the most down to earth person, and here I am. I have like 400 something subs right now. Tom still messages me like, "When are you doing the next Name That Tune? I want to be on." And I'm like, this dude from this like humongous conglomerate channel that has all these subs is worried about when HanStar with 400 subs is doing his Name That Tune stream because Tom wants to be on. And I could message Tom right now and say, "Hey man," and obviously again, like you said, scheduling. I could message Tom right now and say, "Hey man, we're going to do a Name That Tune tonight. Are you down?" And as long as he didn't have something else going on, he'd be like, "Fuck yeah, man, send me a link." To me, and Rob's the same way. Rob's super humble. Like I said, I can't speak as much about Mecca because I've not had as much interaction with her as I have them. Tom especially, I've had a lot of interaction with, and Rob's the same way. You think again from this huge channel, and he doesn't treat somebody with 10 subs any different than he treats somebody with 100,000 subs. He's just a dude.
Yeah.
He's just a dude.
Yeah. I love Rob.
Tom, Rob. I love Rob. Like I said, Tom. I've had the most interaction with Tom, and he's just a good dude. You see Tom so many places. He just pops up randomly so many places. If you send Tom a link and he'll show up.
Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, this is my first stream. I've decided to start doing streams. Tom, if you're available." All of a sudden, Tom pops in.
I kind of grafted my personality from different people, like learn not like learned behavior, but just seeing how somebody was being like, "I want to be like that," like that's a cool person, or I want to have that fire. My channel, my brand, the original Fandom Menace historian, the guy that was RRR, was part Jesse Milestone, part Jeremy Griggs, and part Doomcock, and like that's who I was. But when it came to socially, that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be like, I wanted to be like Tom. I wanted to be like Rob. I wanted to do what Mary was doing. I wanted to bring people together. Like those are probably the major influences socially that I had, and as far as like who I was early on, who I became. So let's see okay, well, we already kind of covered that. Let's see. What has been the biggest takeaway for you since joining the Fandom Menace indie sphere?
The love and the community and just the acceptance is, I think, my biggest takeaway from the community. And a lot of people don't see past the name. Oh, the Fandom Menace. But like we already discussed a little bit ago, once you just peck through the surface a little bit, it started with a specific purpose, and now it's kind of changed and molded and become like its own other thing. This community, yes, it still goes under the name of most people, the Fandom Menace, but there's people from all over, all walks of life. You don't necessarily have to be a Star Wars super fan to be in this community and be loved in this community. And to me, it's so inclusive and so supportive. So I guess that would be my takeaway. I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but that would be my takeaway.
That's a great answer. That's your answer. That's great, man. Let's see. Is there anything that you would like to say to anyone outside of the Fandom Menace that may have a certain view of it? Is there any wisdom, any knowledge that you'd like to impart to anybody from the outside looking in who's going to be reading this book?
It's not just about Star Wars. I think a lot of people get hung up on that because of the name, that it's just about Star Wars. It's not just about Star Wars. It may have started as that again, but it's an all-inclusive community to all people. Like I said, it's like the Island of Misfit Toys. You know, everybody's welcome. Come on in, everybody. The porch light's on. And once you get here, you just see this amazing community of people that support each other, you know, through thick and thin, whether you're a big channel, a small channel, even if you don't have a channel, you just come into the community just to be in the community. It's just so all-inclusive and so supportive. No matter really if you even like Star Wars. You don't have to like Star Wars. I think a lot of people get hung up on that. Oh, I'm not a big, like I told you, I'm not a big Star Wars nerd.
Mm-hmm.
You talk to me about canon, and I'm like, okay, I saw Return of the Jedi when I was a kid. And, you know, I don't get hung up on things like that because I've just never been that focused, you know, into it. But I think that's the biggest thing is it's not just about Star Wars. This is an awesome, all-inclusive, supportive community of like-minded people. Yes, mostly focused towards like sci-fi and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know as well as I do, you see people in the community that don't really give two shits about Star Trek or Star Wars or Doctor Who. You know, they just somehow find this community through a friend or somebody they made, and they're just as important a member of this community as somebody that can tell you, you know, the history of every episode of Doctor Who. You know, to me that would be it. It's a look past the Star Wars, look past the Phantom Menace name, and know this is just a loving, all-inclusive community of just love and support and friendship. And again, like I said earlier, we all rise together. That I love to say that because the Fandom Collective, you know, says that, and they promote everybody. Another person, the Fandom Collective, that's awesome. From everybody I've ever met, and another thing I'd like to say is, and I know this isn't 100% across the board, but we're all just genuine people. Everybody I have met is the same as like us sitting here talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope people think the same thing about me. Yeah, I'm HanStar. Obviously, my name isn't HanStar in real life.
Right.
But I'm still me. I just have that name instead of my actual name. But, you know, I met you in person for the first time. And you're the same dude that I've talked to before. You know, I had talked to JJ for years before I ever met him in person. And he was the same JJ that I met in person in Jacksonville, you know, that time that we were able to go down there. Tommy, the same way when I got to meet Tommy. LDG, you know, we met LDG that day. I just think it's, and I know there's always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, everybody I've talked to on long periods of time and have fortunate enough to meet, this isn't a front. This isn't a show. HanStar isn't a made-up character. I just use that name for some anonymity from my personal life. What you see is what you get. If I run into Chris Knight tomorrow, I'm pretty sure Chris Knight's going to be the same Chris Knight that I've had hours and hours of conversations with. Same thing with Mary.
Right.
You know, like you, I met you in person. The person I'm talking to right now and have talked to before is the same dude that I met in person. It's not like you're playing a character, you know.
Mm-hmm. My brother, thank you so very much. Would it be okay? You said a lot of good things here. Would it be okay? And I'll pass.
I kind of ramble.
Oh no, this is perfect for the book. Like I said, it gives me a lot of stuff to sort through. I might re-edit or restructure a little bit, but I'll make sure you get a copy of everything before I publish, so that you can give it the okay. So yes, I'm comfortable with all this information, with everything you said. If you want some edit it out, you can tell me. I'll take it out. This is all about community, so I want to make sure everybody feels comfortable. That's going to be in here, you know, from Doomcock down.
just make sure I was originally known for my massively large penis.
You've got it, brother. Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
HanStar, formerly known as Big Dick Daddy from Cincinnati.